The Sober Sojourns 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast features recovered men and women who are practicing members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We do not claim to represent Alcoholics Anonymous or any 12 step program. We are friends gathered to discuss our experience in recovery. The discussions in this podcast represent our own individual experiences and opinions as of today.
You can reach us at our email address, sobersojournspodcast@gmail.com, or Instagram at oivea and at Sally. We would love to hear from you. Our aim is to try and be helpful by sharing the realities of our recovery, how we have recovered, and are trudging the road of happy destiny wherever we go.
Pirate Mike and OIVAA presents The Sober Sojourns 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast.
Welcome back to Sober Sojourns 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Pirate Mike.
Hi, I'm Oivea, and we have a wonderful guest joining us today. The really impeccably tall, from what I reckon, in this angle, Joe Barton.
Hi, I'm standing square at 6 feet. It's not super tall. I guess that's pretty tall. I don't know. But yeah, this angle definitely makes me look like I'm taking up the entire frame here. So it was pretty big. Not that big though.
Yeah, I'm tripping on the name a little bit.
You'll get the hang of it. It's I know it's a weird one. Joe Barton, hard to wrap your tongue around, but you'll figure it out.
Oh my God. Before we get going, I have a few kind of things that we touched on before we start recording, and I just want to talk about them. First of all, Pirate Mike is wearing Manila hat that is just, it's like the flat hat. Is that how you say it? When it's like not a baseball cap,
Flat
but it's
brim.
like flat. Sorry?
Is it a flat brim? Did I just forget to? I don't know how the fucking kids wear it. I was just like, I don't want it to look like a duck bill. So
You look like
That's
you're
a
gonna
flat brim.
rap
is it?
any
Yeah.
second.
I look
Look
what?
like a straight at the concert who's about to beat up a little 16-year-old for smoking weed.
I guess that works.
You look
Enforcer.
like you. No, you honestly look like you're gonna rap in Tagalog any second.
Nice.
Yeah. That's the vibe we're going for. And then before we started, you said that you don't remember the name of the podcast.
I'm also
Pirate
old.
Let's just list everything that you're doing funny today.
Well, that's why I'm dressed like a 90s gangster rapper, which is my cultural touchstone, but then repping my own city.
And
the city.
also in the city, and then
Yeah.
at the same time you look like an uncle from like a TV sitcom.
What sitcoms are you watching?
Diverse ones.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. No, I'm that guy. Joe knows. I will attend the Pearl Jam concert with the Pearl Jam shirt on.
Oh man.
Break
That's
the
a
rules.
hard rule to know for most fans, but I feel like Pearl Jam is the exception to that. You're allowed to. You're encouraged to wear a Pearl Jam shirt to a Pearl Jam show.
It's very inclusive, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
from past tours.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah,
3 minutes. How are you already talking about Pearl Jam on this podcast?
Yeah, I thought we were gonna save that till the end. I don't know, dude. I was rocking out on the way over here to go. So like I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, I should have seen this coming. So let me get back on the subject of this podcast. We're excited to have you on. I mainly wanted to have you on because we're friends and we don't get to do this. Like we talk a lot, I feel like, you and I, but we don't get to do this. And then we looked for an excuse because this is a travel podcast. Or like, what are we gonna, what are you gonna talk about? Or are we gonna get into like America stuff? What are you gonna do? And then I remembered that you're the most obscenely Irish guy I've ever met who is not, you know, who's not like who does not have an Irish accent, basically, who's not born there. So I was like,
I mean,
okay,
yeah,
let's
I'm
talk about that.
American. I'm definitely American. Just like need to throw that out there in case there's any confusion. I'm absolutely American. I got sober in America. I was born in America. My parents were born in America. But yeah, that's a thing that's important to my family. And I don't know. I thought it might be interesting to talk about because it was an interesting time in my life when I went to Ireland because I was in this weird in between phase where I recognized like, oh, I'm a drug addict. I'm absolutely a drug addict. With a bunch of stuff. But I was like, but I'm not an alcoholic. I'm definitely not an alcoholic. And I think I thought that because alcohol wasn't my favorite. There was other stuff that I would always go to that I would prefer to alcohol. So it was this weird period of time where I'm like, this stuff is destroying my life. It's destroying my relationship, all the stuff, all the side effects that come with being an addict. But I was like, but I'm not an alcoholic. So I'm going to quit everything except for alcohol because I can still drink. I can still drink like a normal person. So I thought. And I went to Ireland, and it was my first real, like, you know, there were no other substances to be clouding my head, and I was like, oh, the same thing happens to me with alcohol that happens with other drugs. We're like, I thought that I could hang with this one, but that appears not to be true. And it was just like, I don't know. It was honestly a blur. It's a real blurry time for me, but I do remember those moments of horror, just like waking up and just being like, how did this happen with alcohol? I've never been like this before. And I don't know. It can seem like heady, and I don't know how important it is to talk about, that line between the hard drinker and the alcoholic. But I do think if there was ever a time that I crossed that line into the point of no return, it was the few weeks I was abroad in Ireland. And I don't know, it was a really stark look at, this isn't just certain drugs you have to stay away from. Like, you need to get sober. And I didn't get sober then. I didn't get sober till 6 years later. And the alcoholism got worse. But yeah, that was my first like clear look at, I didn't have these words at that time, but phenomenon of craving and mental obsession stuff with regards to alcohol.
Got it. And that's when you talk about those two components, right? So that's what you experienced in Ireland that made you think, without having other substances as distractions, you're like, oh, so when you said the same thing was happening with alcohol that happened with drugs, that's basically what you were talking about. Like you just couldn't stop, and it was the only thing that was there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not language I would have used at that time, but yes, that idea of, oh, this is in me now. And it was amazing too, just to watch like the progression of it, to watch how quickly that went. Because it was like, I mean, it started in the airport. It started in America before I left. Like it started in the airport. I was like, this is how we'll make it through this trip. And then by like day 4, I'm like starting to drink beers at 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning. So like I just watched it get out of control really fast. It's funny and it's sad when I look back at pictures from that trip. I can always tell when in the time frame of the trip it was based on like how puffy and red my face is and just like how miserable I look. I'm just like, oh yeah, that must have been week 3. It's looking real rough around the edges there.
Oh man. Oy vey. I mean, it's such an interesting topic in its own. Like, not to, I don't know how much we'll get into the actual country of Ireland because, you were, as you describe, you had a new level of being shit-faced, basically. But it is an interesting thing to talk about, the line and when it's crossed. I don't know if I can, like, point to I need to think about this. To a moment. Well, it's hard looking back because we didn't have terms where we were drinking, oh, the hard drinker, the moderate drinker, the real alcoholic. But I'm sure the line was crossed at some point, but it was, I don't have any just something off the top of my head. Mike, do you have a point when you're like, you can like definitely recognize?
In a way, actually, one of the questions I was going to have for Joe was, was it easy for you to like at the time, recognize that you yourself was having some kind of a problem? Because from what I know of Ireland, like there's a big drinking culture there, right? And I can relate with that. And that was part of it was one of the obstacles that I had when I was still drinking was, um, I mean, I was drinking before I left the Philippines, but whenever I'd come back for summers, like while I was going to school abroad, all I would do for the most part was get like shit faced every day here. And but I was hanging around with so many people and even relatives who were doing kind of the same thing. And when you said that, like, this is how I'm going to make it through the day, I knew so many people who were like, we treat it so casually and with humor, like, this is how you make it through the day. This is how you make it through like hard event. Everybody I knew was like getting drunk all the time. I didn't see how much of a problem it was for me, how much I was really using it as a solution for life until much later on. So they like if the question is, was there a line? I do recall a time when I thought, like, a conscious decision that alcohol was going to be a companion of mine and was going to be a part of my persona. I do remember that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like thinking, fuck, this is a problem, probably not until 24 hours before I asked somebody to sponsor me and I'd already been attending meetings and getting drunk, because that's when I was like, had this moment of clarity where I thought, what the fuck am I doing? Still drinking after X, Y, and Z, And it's not like X, Y, and Z were the most tragic things that happened to me when I was drinking. Just something happened. There was a spark of realization.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Mike, too, about like, well, it's weird because, Ireland, big drinking culture, but also I live in Wisconsin in the United States, which also has like a huge binge drinking culture. And I live in a college town, and it's a thing, it's very much at play here. And also, I spent my 20s working in kitchens, mainly at like breweries and stuff. And that was part of the thing too, is we drink all day, every day. And everybody did it. And so that distinction again between like the hard drinker and the real alcoholic, it's not easy to figure out when you're like first starting this stuff out. Especially like I said, with me, I knew I had problems with other drugs. I knew I did not react normally to them. But I'm like with alcohol, I seem to be behaving kind of like everybody around me. It wasn't until I got like a closer view at these other people I know who honestly drank more than I did. Like I know people who drank much more than I did and had worse consequences from their drinking. But at a certain point, after like a DUI or their wife left them or something like that, they just stopped. They were able to do. That's the thing that I couldn't relate with. It's like I seem to be returning to this over and over again, even though I know it's a bad idea. And I think that's kind of what separates me from these other people.
Yeah, that hits. That makes sense. Same thing. I knew people, some good friends, still friends, who did worse than I did. And yet they were able to straighten out, and they got the head start in getting their lives together. And it wasn't until I could see exactly like that moment, right? Where, why am I still doing this? Why am I still on the hamster wheel? Like, there's really something wrong here. And on top of that, I think being aware that I couldn't explain why.
Like, why can't I figure it out?
Yeah, and that'll fuck you up, and it'll make you think like, well, at least it made me think like that this is a willpower thing, and that I was weak, and that these other people somehow had more mental fortitude than I did. It really wasn't until somebody from AA explained to me exactly how this thing works, and that willpower has nothing to do with it, at least in regards to, the first drink, the first drug. So that was freeing, that was liberating to understand, like, no, I'm not just a weak-willed person. Like, this is an actual thing that I'm learning about and completely changed. I don't know. Also on this topic, I was just thinking on the way over here, like my different traveling stuff, and this isn't sober traveling stuff, but I remember how awful it would be to travel before I was sober, and I just avoided it most of the time because it's like, what am I gonna do when I get there? Am I gonna like try and like sneak drugs on the airplane? Am I gonna try and like sneak away from my family and buy some while I'm there? Or there was a few times where I was like, okay, I'll just use this as a little break, right? I'll use this as like a 9-day break. And then of course I'm just miserable because I'm like going through withdrawal and I'm sober and untreated alcoholic addict. So that was miserable. And then even as like a dry drunk, even at times being like 6 months sober, but having no program, no spiritual solution in my life, it was just miserable because I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
me. So I just thought I didn't like traveling for a while. And then I remember in yeah, like 2 years ago, taking my first vacation as like a recovered person. I was like, oh, this is sick, dude. This is awesome. I love this. Like, I want to do more of that. And I have done a lot more of it. And I'm excited to continue to do more because it's fun now.
Oh man, you've been in some like really awesome stuff. Like I think you said something, it made me laugh so much. You went to this like crazy hiking thing in the snow that you shared with us, and I think what you said was like, if I don't make it, if a bear eats me, to tell my sponsors they were annoying. Just
That's
laugh.
that's funny.
I
Oh,
forgot
it's
about that.
super.
I absolutely did say that.
Oh man, I'm definitely stealing that for future reference. But yeah, there's no way I could have done the kind of travel that I did not sober. Like there's no way I would have put myself in dangerous situations. It's dangerous enough, I feel like, to travel as a young woman, like wherever, or to solo travel regardless. But then I saw all those people, traveling fucked up, and I'm like, oh God, I'm so happy that I'm not there. That and my travel looked really different, I guess, as a result. I very much I did have trouble at hostels, I have to say, because of the drink culture that happens in hostels, and I had a really rough time with that. But I figured it out slowly and surely. But yeah, there's nothing romantic, I think, about traveling drunk. It's funny to say now, but it's actually not funny at all. I really don't remember parts of Prague. Like there are days in Prague a few years back where I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea. And it was like cosmopolitan drunk, which is a very specific drunk for me. Uh, Parmak, you were nodding when it comes to romanticizing
Oh
drunk travel.
yeah, nothing but that. Are you kidding? I mean, maybe because as they refer to me here, I'm as close to like a pure alcoholic, whatever the fuck
I
is,
see.
um, as you can get. I love the idea of getting drunk in different places, getting drunk at the airport, I mean, it was super uncomfortable when I was in it. There's nothing romantic about like being about to shit your pants in the middle of an airport terminal. But when I was there, I always romanticized the idea of it, like being fucked up in other places. And um, when I think about the good times, the times that I enjoyed when I was still drinking, a lot of it was being drunk in other places, like being drunk in Times Square, being drunk in San Francisco, being like, things like that. And again, because there were other people who I thought were getting drunk just like me, I didn't think that there was a problem. I thought that this was just the way that I was going to be able to maximize this experience, right? And I do appreciate also what Joe said, though, about enjoying travel as a recovered person, because there was a long time in between, right? So I was sober, but had not yet embraced recovery for years, in the sense that like we talk about it now with our friend group. And so social situations and traveling, any fucking thing that involved a degree of change, were still very um
Yeah.
it was all uncomfortable for me, but I thought that that's just the way it is for somebody who's sober. Like, I'm going to be uncomfortable for a long time. I know a lot of other people who are uncomfortable in sobriety, and that's okay. That's what we're just going to continue to fake it until we make it, and this
Yeah.
goes into like the other side of like fellowship culture, right? And I think, I don't know if I shared this on this podcast, like when we were talking to one of our other guests, but recently we were covering a vision for you, and that was something that it popped in my head, was that I met recovered alcoholics very early on, but I was intimidated and afraid by the light. It was just so fucking overwhelming. And so I took a hard left turn early in sobriety and found people who were uncomfortable with it. I found a bunch of other people who were boys like whistling in the dark, right? And I just thought like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. inwardly we're all thinking and hoping that we could like take another drink with impunity. And that's
Mhm.
just going to be the way that it is until I've done enough good deeds in AA so that I don't feel that way anymore. It fucking sucks.
Oh man,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's awful. I thought that was going to be around forever. I thought that's what being sober was. And yeah, you get that idea from a lot of the fellowship who is that is what they're going through. That is their experience. You get that idea from just like the media of, what
Mm.
sober people are like, movies and TV
Yeah.
shows. Yeah, I remember I hadn't
Mhm.
been to, this is also kind of a travel story. I hadn't been to a lot of, I'd been to a few different 12-step fellowships, and that was all the vibes I got from all of them. It's like, yeah, well, this sucks, but we're here. So you're not going to be drinking during the next hour. And then if you need to come back, there's another one at noon, there's another one at 5, and you're just going to do this until you die. And I was like, fuck that, dude. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. This is fucking
Eventually,
miserable.
yeah, because like if that's if those are my options, right? Of like stay sober one miserable day at a time, or use and drink, I'm gonna use and drink. So that's what I kept on doing. And I remember finding one of our friends' recovery podcast while I was doing bong rips in my apartment, and for about a month, I got stoned all day at work, all night, and I just devoured this podcast. And I was fascinated by it because it was like a perspective on 12 step I had never heard before,
Yeah.
but still wasn't, at that place of like, I was sort of like they talk about in, I think it's Two Wives, like the man who wants to quit. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I was like, I'm not quite there. I want to be there, but I'm not quite there.
Right.
And then I think I heard somebody, maybe this was in a meeting, maybe on a podcast, I don't remember. I heard somebody say that when they were in that position, they just prayed for willingness. I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing that. I didn't believe in anything strongly, but I was open to the idea of prayer. So I just started doing it. And it didn't take long. Within a couple weeks, I was getting ready to go on another trip. I was getting ready to go to the Southwest with my dad. And again, it was this thing in my head of like, okay, how am I going to manage this? Am I going to try and sneak stuff on the airplane? Like, what's going to happen? And I just like broke down, like, I can't do this anymore.
Mm,
I can't keep trying to
yeah.
figure this out. And I had like, I've shared this with some friends. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but so I just like broke down in the middle of the workday before I was supposed to leave, and I drove to the church. My mom works at a church, and I drove there, and I'm just like bawling my eyes out, just being like, I can't do this anymore. Like, yeah, you got to get sober again. And I was like, I don't just need to get sober. I need to have the desire to use removed from me. And she just looked at me very kindly, and she's like, I don't know if that's how it works. Because she's not an addict. She has no reference. And I just remember like through tears just being like, no, mom, it
Oh,
does. I heard these people on a podcast say that's how it works.
oh God. I'm like
That's
heart.
awesome,
Oh man.
though.
It was
Oh.
awesome. And then on that trip, I got connected with shout out Instagram account Hampshire Grenadier, and
Nice.
yeah, it's been pretty fucking cool since then.
Oh man. Oh my God, that's such a
Yes.
I felt that story. I felt that story so much. First of all, yeah, it is kind of awesome as part of Mike said, but also I just remember being like, I can't do this anymore. And I feel like
Yeah,
willingness, just the topic of willingness is such a misunderstood word, you know. Even
totally,
sometimes for me
totally.
still in my daily life, you know, and I've seen looking back now, I can see people who I have seen walk into the rooms of NA in Israel. I remember that very vividly. Now, walking into rooms, being utterly like just, you know, they're there and they're in a really tough situation with drugs. And once they don't come back, or once they die, we get news that they died of a drug overdose. People are like, yeah, they didn't have willingness, they weren't willing enough.
Yeah, that's weaponizing willingness. And I don't think that's,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's totally misled when people say shit like that. And I hear that all the time locally. And like, I think they had willingness. I just don't know that they were approached to someone who could have actually been put in a position to help them, which is sad. And it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It
It's sad,
does.
and that's the distortion of the program that ends up really, killing people. And I think, on a more personal level, still, when I think about willingness, I try to remember the most of the willingness I have is willingness, right, to try, the willingness to pray, as you mentioned, just to pray about it, because I find that with most things, I don't know how to really describe it, but I feel like I don't have the power to deal with certain things. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have the willingness to pray about it, and that does wonders. It just does wonders. The answers will come, if your house is in order, or well, that's not the quote I'm looking for. It's in the fourth step. It's like the answers will come if you want it in
Yeah.
regards to the sex relation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think on the subject of willingness too, like um, that gets misused a lot. I mean, when I was going through this thing before I got in touch with the person who's my sponsor now, I got a different sponsor who started taking me through the steps via the 12 and 12. And I would have to write like essays on each step and stuff like that. And like
Mm.
I had willingness, like I said, I was still broken. I was like, I don't know. Like this is what this person's telling me to do. This person's been sober for like over a decade. I guess that's what I should do. So I had willingness to do stuff and to text him every day, and we do like gratitude stuff together. And I had willingness to do that because I didn't know what else to do, and that seemed right.
Yeah.
And it's like I think a better channel for that willingness would have been to do the stuff that we actually know works. And when I say that, I'm not like knocking on this person. Like I still love that guy. He's still a person I see occasionally, and he means well, and he's trying to help people. But it's not what I needed. I needed to get through those steps fast. And I remember saying to him like, I think I'm ready to start writing a 4-step. Can I like start that? And he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like he pulled the reins on me. So like it's just like I don't know. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I understand that. I mean, I can't fault, and I don't want to like cast blame on the people who guided me through the steps like earlier in sobriety before I had a different experience, right? That's, I mean, I think they were fine. But the way that it's presented or communicated, right, is like, am I just doing what somebody told me to do so that I can get a similar experience that he did? But then what exactly is that experience, right? Is the experience just I'm going to be sober? Or I go back to is because it was brought up in a meeting, right? Like if I'm going through trouble in life, there was somebody who's relatively new in sobriety that was asking, like, do I have to fucking do the steps for everything that happens in life? And I thought about that. And I've had similar feelings before, and it feels like a pain in the ass if I don't know what I'm doing it for, right? If I'm uncomfortable and I'm like, I gotta do a fucking inventory, like, yeah, it feels like a pain in the ass. Number one, if I'm unwilling to do it, but then two, if I don't really know what it is I'm doing it for. And there's a part in the book
Yeah.
that, and it's an idea that gets repeated, which is the like our real reliance is upon God. Like remember that, right? And then in the intro to step 4, there's that bit where it says, our decision is not going to have any permanent effect unless otherwise followed by strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things that are blocking us. Blocking us from what? From recovery from God. Not just, in order to stay away from the drink, not just so that I can put some other stuff on paper. So when that was explained to me through the podcast, again,
Yeah.
through another podcast, I had a different perspective on it. I think the episode we're talking about the same podcast, and I think,
Sorry,
and
were
We can
you?
chat it out
a
as long
podcast greater
as
than
long as
yourself. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Mike, were you
Good
doing
hang,
bong rips?
ripping bong rips and listening to a podcast greater than yourself. Good hang, good time.
not bong rips, but I was casually thinking about taking my life every day to and from work. Thinking that that's the way I could
Oh
stay
Fun,
yeah,
sober, and
fun
uh,
times.
and being worried about other fellowship stuff. But I remember there was one episode where somebody was talking about step 10, the promises of step 10, and I realized that there had been some time where I was living and I wasn't being plagued by the obsession anymore. But that used to scare me. I used to think,
Oh yeah.
because of how I understood it, that if I wasn't afraid of getting drunk again every waking moment, then that was arrogant. And I better not fucking
Yeah.
talk about it because, you know, someone's going to sick the AA police on me, and I'll probably get drunk because I'm so arrogant. But then to hear somebody talk about, no, that's an actual thing. Like that's a promise. That is something that we can expect to have once God has performed this miracle within us because we've let him in, you know, then it changed my perspective on the recovery experience entirely. No one had really communicated it that way to me that I can recall, you know, and it was really powerful. And it came years after I started attending meetings and being a part of the fellowship. Um, yeah. So that presentation, I think, is like, and the understanding of what exactly it is we're trying to do here, like, is super important.
It's funny too when you mentioned that the 10-step promises, and I try and make it a point at every meeting to, I don't say like these are the 10-step promises, but I touch on that fact that I no longer have the desire to drink or use substances anymore, and it's just like not a thought I have. And then, you know, when sometimes in the parking lot, somebody after the meeting, somebody wants to push back on that, they'll always quote like another part of the 10-step promises, which they're like, it sounds like you're pretty cocky about that. That's, you know, we're not supposed to be cocky or afraid. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what about me saying that I'm not interested in using alcohol sounds like it's cockiness to you, but I do get that too. And I do remember like first reading those directions for 10 and 11. It's been like, you know, definitely having an experience with the steps, but it also kind of feels like a death sentence, being like, oh, I got to do this for the rest of my fucking life. Like everything that comes up, I got to write an inventory on. I have to do this like prayer thing like every morning and every night. That kind of sucks. But like, I don't know. It's a thing where like I try when I take people through the steps. Obviously, we try and get them through quickly, and it's like, you know, let's get you on this path so we can get you like growing on this path, and you see that it's better than the alternative, and just like
Yeah.
everything else in the steps, it's like it's not as bad as you think it's gonna be. You know, like it's just like, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
sit down, write an inventory, call somebody, help somebody. It's not that bad. It's not going to derail your whole day. Just do it. And then the more you do it, the more you realize like, oh, I actually see that I am being directed. I am receiving guidance and I'm moving in a certain way. And I think that's kind of what they talk about when they talk about sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly in the spiritual appendix. I think that's in is like, yeah, sometimes it's hard to see that like right away within the first few weeks when we're starting writing inventory, we're starting amends, but then you continue with this process and the scope broadens a little bit, you will see that like, oh, there is this force here and it is playing a part in my life as so long as I'm open to receiving that direction and doing and following it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, man.
Amen. Amen. It's such a like it became, and I agree, at least for me, it became such a just a relief, still like something to lean on, you know, whether that's the prayer and meditation or the inventory. Like I don't, you know, I do have moments, you know, that I'm like, and I think I shared this with you, like, I don't want to write all these like backed up resentments I have to write about. But at the end of the day, it's such a, you know, people don't have that, you know, people don't have this path that we have. And people don't have that are just, you know, regular people who struggle with whatever, you know. Again, I don't like to use the word regular, non-alcoholics. And then people in the fellowship don't have that, and that becomes, you know, and as you mentioned, you know, saying certain things, um saying I'm recovered is so controversial. I'm like, I am bound to piss people off. And then you have the people like, I'm not recovered. I am, you know, I'm still recovering and I'll never recover for the rest of my life. I'm like, okay, well, sorry. I apologize. That doesn't sound
Fuck me, I
pleasant.
guess.
Yeah.
Right. That's yeah, I don't understand it as well. So if I say I'm recovered, then I'm arrogant. If I tell you that I'm no longer obsessed with alcohol, then you tell me I'm not an alcoholic. That was another fear. People would say like, oh, you're not plagued by constant thoughts of death and alcoholism, then you might not be an alcoholic. And it's a culture of staying in misery for whatever reason, you know, in some places, like it has been. I'm glad that there seem to be more and more people, maybe because my ears are perked up now, but I am meeting, more and more people that are speaking about recovery in this sense. I probably credit like online meetings and shit for, for bringing more of that to my doorstep.
Oh, you mean the John Barleycorn effect?
Probably, yeah, yeah. Well, it was random. Like so, in this corner of the world, right? We only have a handful of meetings, and a lot of them, most of them were online for some time. But because we're also listed in one of the public directories, a mutual friend of Rhino's, like, popped in. I think she's been on Agent, yeah, she's been on Agent X's like podcast before. Prosaic Steel Girder, and I heard her share. I was chairing the meeting, and then we kind of connected on like similar ideas, and it didn't take very long for it to be like, oh, and such and such and this and this. Yeah, I know the Rhinos guys. Like I know, yeah, and that's such to be able to have that kind of an encounter in like a world as big as this, right, is was incredibly powerful to me. And I still see her, she'll pop in every now and then and grace us with her presence, but like it's pretty cool. The fellowship that I was seeking or craving for so long. I am actually getting to experience that promise being delivered.
And you just had to become
Oh, yeah.
willing. Who would have thought?
Willing for the right thing. I'll say willing for the right thing. Cause yeah, I mean, I can relate
I'm
with what Joe
kidding.
was saying. But it's important because like I felt like I was like willing was coming out of my pores at some point. Like if I'm gonna be any more willing, my brain's gonna be fucking explode. Like it's gonna explode. But then willing to do what? Willing for what? I didn't know
Yeah.
where to direct that before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right too about there do seem to be more people talking about like recovery, as it's talked about in the big book. And I found people locally in my area who have never heard of any of the podcasts that we're talking about. They've never heard of Black Rhinos, but they talk about this stuff like we do. Maybe and that's cool. And I'm glad that they exist independently. And like what I've realized in the years of doing prayer and inventory on this stuff is like I need that. I need you guys. I need recovered people around to take inventory, to ask questions about sponsorship, to find out, hey, what do I do in jail at a meeting in jail? What do I do in detox? Like all this stuff. Like I want those people with experience around, but also like there was a time where it almost felt like I was kind of hiding out in these circles of just recovered people, which again is partially what I need, but then partially it's like, now let's go to like the awful noon Zoom meeting that's just like 200 people puking their guts out and like where nobody's sharing about recovery, like because that's kind of where this is like needed most. So at a certain point, like I said, love big book meetings, love talking about this stuff with you guys, but I'm like also I need to go be useful. I need to try and be a voice for this stuff in the place where it's not getting spread. Which honestly, it's kind of more fun. It's kind of more fun to just like roll into places where it's not being talked about at all versus, I don't know, it can just feel like a circle jerk. If it's the same 15 people talking about the big book for the 10th week in a row, I'm like, I'm bored, dude. There's nobody here to help. I'm bored. I don't want to be here.
What's your most effective fishing tactic when you go on those trips?
I haven't had to go fishing in a long time. If you guys ever highly recommend, Max D was talking about this the other day, our mutual, like if you can like go to a Zoom meeting once and get your name on like their sponsorship list, like you will just have people just like you will have constantly having people contact you. Detox is really the only meeting I go regularly to, but and I don't know, like I try and keep it real short and sweet when I go to like just the random fishing holes of just like, okay, this seems like a big meeting where nobody's really talking about the solution, or some people are kind of hinting at it, but nobody's talking directly about it. And I've kind of just like tried to dial it in to like a less than 2 minute thing of basically just being like, hey, here's how I drank. This is I don't even say these words, but like this is what the coming out of craving was. This is what the mental obsession is. I did this thing, which is I had somebody take me through the 12 steps, and now I don't want to drink anymore. And that's pretty awesome. And anybody who wants that can have it. It's just a matter of doing this stuff. And I try to have that pretty dialed in where I can talk about that in a way that seems authentic and not like I'm like reading off a script, because I don't like giving that vibe off. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like, there's so many other people who are just gonna like dump for like 7 minutes, and even if they do have something valuable to say in there, it can be hard to like pick that out. So it's like, what is the shortest I can possibly make this pitch to be effective and that people might actually listen? And yeah, I found it to be a good tactic.
Nice. Nice. I just want to like clarify though, fishing, like to anyone who doesn't know or understand, it's like the slang term for picking up sponsees. I don't know who listens to this, but in case you don't know, yeah, no, I like how you said that it's very important to not come off. I always feel like I I get a little nervous about it sometimes because I'm like, I don't want to come off as an asshole, you know? Yeah, I don't want to come off whatever and like a person and not read off a script. And it's always like this gentle thing. I find that what's been good is to just say, hey, I wasn't able to be okay sober even in these rooms, because that was my experience, that I thought I was doing, like, I'm fine, I'm doing the thing, like even as I was sober, even as I wasn't drinking, like I couldn't be okay, and nothing was able to really make me okay, like not the meetings, not my sponsor, like no one was able to. And then I try to talk about the steps, and yeah, I feel like we should share scripts and then morph it with AI into a monstrous script like we do, Pirate Mike, with this podcast name that you don't remember how to say.
The fishing script. I like that idea. Another thing for me
Yeah.
to try to remember. It'll work out.
Oh man.
We have a longer fishing script. That's what we do at detox meetings.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of y'all from all over America and all over the world, sort of with interest in going to treatment centers and not really knowing what to do there. And the handful of people who I roll into treatment centers with, we kind of dialed into, I think, a really good 15, 20-minute presentation on what AA is, and then sort of like a step one for idiots, like kind of thing. And
Step one
for
for
you
dummies.
guys, step one for dummies. And for you guys, or for anybody listening who wants that, I do have a private YouTube link to share for anybody who's like, I want to go to detox, but I don't know what to do. It's just a thing I found helpful. So yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So if you want to reach out, we would love to hear that. And if you want to reach out to Joe Barton, I don't think you have a meme account, but you can reach out to us and we can
Yeah.
link you up. I'm sure you want to
I
know
come
more
up with
about.
like one meme. I come up with like one meme every like 6 months, and I just send it to one of you guys and let you make it.
That's good. I mean, alternatively, they could just like look up Joe Barton and direct message
Yeah.
like every person that shows up until
So
somebody
that's gonna be a
responds.
problem.
Until they found a recovered alcoholic.
I think the highest profile Joe Barton is a disgraced congressman from Texas, who was like fired or something for like sending dick pics out to women or something like that. I want to make it very clear, that's not me.
Jesus Christ. Oh man, but I feel like Joe, you have so much to contribute. It's more, well, talking about memes, Joe Barton.
Talking about memes.
This is hard for me to pronounce. I don't know if you can tell. There's something about the O and then the bar. It's like too much for my English. But the meme. So you and I have had this idea, or like it was thrown out there because I make really niche memes. I don't know if you noticed, to do a Lord of the Rings recovered meme page.
Oh
I'm
shit.
so down for that. If I'm ever gonna have a meme page, it's gonna be so niche. So I think like you and I could tag team a Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings one, and Max, who I was talking about earlier. I think he and I were considering doing an NFL recovery memes page. Like that's like super intricate like framework I need to set up for myself. There's just so much meat on the bone. I feel like for both those.
Yes, actually.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's a good idea. Sometimes when I have daydreamed about like, what kind of niche meme page I could create, it's always these more obscure ones, but you guys hit on something that's got a wealth of, yeah, you can keep you supplied for years, I feel.
Oh man, I
Yeah,
have so many ideas.
yeah.
I just feel like this episode has been not really about Ireland, but more about willingness, perhaps. This will be fun to name, part
Willing to go
Mike.
to
But
Ireland.
but wait, have you ever? No, no, seriously. So, have you ever gotten a chance to go again and do like a new experience, recovered?
No, I can't wait. I was supposed to go in 2020, and then the pandemic happened, and then I relapsed, and haven't made it back. But can't wait to go again and view it with fresh eyes. Despite a lot of my time there being a blur, it's a beautiful country. I love Ireland. I love the people of Ireland. Yeah, I got to get back over there soon.
Hmm.
Yeah, this really was not about Ireland at all, but I think it was good.
We can transition. We can try and make it. I mean, I feel like because usually I would ask, we would ask like questions about the country, but I feel like for you, Joe Barton, maybe I should have a bit of a themed question. So here you go. Pardon, Mike, you might need to help me with this because it's an idea of a question line. Um, out of the characters in the Lord of the Rings,
Nice.
okay? And this is, mind you, by the way, we have done a marathon of Lord of the Rings together, basically, until I abandoned
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you left me in the dust, dude. You said we weren't gonna watch 2 hours, and then you texted me in the middle of the night. You're like, just finished it.
Oh, that sucks.
Oh man, I'm coming off as such an asshole. But you had your thing, and it was like I had like a few days off, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
man, I'm feeling it. But it was so fun. Okay, out of the characters in the Lord of the Rings, pardon, Mike, do you want to help me with this? I feel like,
Hmm.
okay, which one?
Do I want to be my
Which?
sponsor?
Yeah,
No, go ahead. What were you gonna ask?
yeah. Let's go with that. Which of the
Let's go
characters
with
in
it.
Lord of the Rings would you want to be your sponsor?
Uh, I don't know. It's kind of got
Oh
to be
man.
somebody who's like kind of a hard ass. Um, you have to edit out the silence for I'm thinking
No,
really
no,
hard
you're
about this.
thinking. You
Really,
have to think
really
about
quick.
it.
Can I go first?
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
please.
okay.
Just to
Yeah,
break the
sure.
silence? Gimli,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
100%.
That's good. That's good. I have a really basic answer that they will love, but it's Aragorn, son of Arathorn, because
No, no, it can't be that, and I'll tell you why.
Wait, he
Because
didn't finish.
fucking your sponsor is a bad thing. And we all know, regardless if we're straight or bi or gay, that we would fuck Aragorn, son of Arathorn.
uh,
So no, I'm vetoing that answer and you know it.
okay, fine. I just think there's something nice about his ability to be really tender at points, and other times he'll like rip out the sword and be like, "Hell yeah, it's time to get to work." That's really what I try and embody in a sponsor. Is you don't want the tough guy who's just going to be a tough guy for the sake of being a tough guy all the time. Sometimes when you're a sensitive little boy like me, you need somebody to talk to in a kinder way. And I think Aragorn could do that. But if I'm being vetoed with that answer, um,
I'll accept the
No, you
answer,
can keep
Joe.
it. Yeah, yeah. You can keep it. You can keep it. It's fine.
yeah. My
Um,
other answer would just be the guy I was telling you about yesterday during the charge of the Rohirrim, who's just like going ham on the reins. I just love that guy so much. Love the enthusiasm. I just love it.
oh man. I feel like I would go with Gandalf just because he's so vague and like out of it. I just want someone to just
Gandalf's
be
definitely
hands
taking
off.
you through the 12.
That's
Sorry,
so
what? I
funny.
didn't catch that.
Gandalf is definitely taking you through the 12 and 12.
That's so funny. Both of you guys and your takes. I went with Gimli because I feel like I know enough not to take him seriously. I probably have like Gimli's in my life. So he'll try to be a hard ass, but then I'll laugh at him and I know he really loves me. And then we'll be, friends forever.
Oh
Interestingly
man.
enough, Gimli, one of the very few Lord of the Rings characters who is visibly drunk on screen.
Maybe that's why. Like we know
Well,
each other's hearts.
Yeah, you can relate.
actually, Legolas was feeling a little tingle in his finger, so I'm assuming he was getting there.
Yeah, you can't have him sponsor you. There's no way.
No, no.
Oh, actually,
Legolas
no.
can.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
No. What was the original
Okay.
question though? Was it gonna be, Vey, I'm curious, was it gonna be some kind of like OK Cupid quiz where you were like, which one do you think is which character do you relate the most with or think
Oh,
is the
like
most to you?
which one is Bill Wilson or whatever?
No, like Joe, which one do you think is you? Yeah.
I w- Oh man, I don't know if that's, I don't know if I can think of it. I have no question prepared. Um, which one is Bill Wilson? I don't know.
Oh
I don't think you
shit.
can make that.
Yeah.
Maybe uh
No, I know who
oh
it is. I
man.
just forgot his name. It's all I see is the actor's face in my head. And so that's gonna be for anyone who read the book, that's already like but whichever one is played by Lee Pace, if you guys know who that is. It's an elf.
Oh,
Oh
The
is
yeah,
it?
that smug elf with the sense of smug superiority. That's absolutely Bill Wilson.
Yeah,
Good,
that's
good
Bill
call.
Wilson, right? That's Bill Wilson.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah. Thinks a little too highly of himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Which character, and I already have an answer in mind, is most likely to suggest page 417 as a topic in a meeting?
Fucking Gandalf, dude.
I mean, Gandalf deliberately talks about acceptance.
Jesus.
What was your answer though? What was your answer? You said you already had one.
I think it's Frodo. Just because at the end he's so like, so acceptance is the answer, basically.
I see you, Vay, and how you regard anybody that throws out 417 right now.
What?
You're
Did
like,
I say
you're like,
something?
you
Frodo's a great
you
character.
little whiny little Nancy boy. That's how you're like.
I have a thing with Frodo face. I find it really
Yeah.
troublesome.
How did none of us say that we would have Sam sponsor us? I
Oh,
feel like that's a slam dunk. Sam would do
yeah.
anything to help you get sober if you wanted to.
Maybe that's the problem, Joe. Maybe that's the problem.
Maybe Sam should be in Coda.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think so.
Maybe Sam will allow you to burn his mattress.
Yeah. Sam is definitely
Just because you're
in
not even
Coda.
drunk.
Sam
But
is
he might fight
definitely
you
in
for
Coda.
it. You might have to fight him.
The single tear running down his cheek when you relapse again.
I thought we were gonna do a Pearl Jam question.
Okay,
Oh,
fine.
nice.
Fuck. Pirate Mike asked Joe Barton a Pearl Jam question in
Not
this
prepared.
weird ass pod episode.
I was mostly kidding.
I just think I appreciate how that's another thing that'll bind us despite the gap in like years, continents, and experience. Recovery in Pearl Jam. That makes my heart sing.
Yeah, like
Hey,
I said,
mean,
I'm an American who hasn't really traveled a lot, so it's like if I run out of things to talk about, I know I could talk with Pirate Mike about Pearl Jam,
Pearl
and I
Jam.
know I could talk with Lord of the Rings. So like this will be fine.
I mean, if we're doing travel, I even have like a short Wisconsin story, which is near and dear to my heart. Because you
Hit me
mentioned,
with it.
yeah, because you mentioned like the drinking culture there too, the beer culture. And the last job that I had before I moved back, was for an agency that was based in Wisconsin, and we were working in a satellite office in LA. But I had the chance to visit 1 weekend, and it was my first time going. They knew that I was sober. I wasn't like hiding it at work or anything, but I did find like it was weird. So I was used to the way that I usually get like people the way people usually react when I mention that if I'm in LA or other parts. It was different in Wisconsin. And I think because they kind of expected that the thing that I would want to do was do like the brewery tour or things like that. So when I said that like not only am I not interested in beer, but I don't drink, there's just like a different kind of like, oh, what do I do? It's almost as if I went to Orange County or LA and I said I had no interest in going to Disneyland or some shit as a tourist, right?
Yeah, they just don't know what else to do with you.
They didn't know.
Where were you? Where were you in Wisconsin?
Burlington.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I was in Burlington, and we were headed to Chicago after a couple days from there, and that was another thing. So to experience the ability to drive to Chicago from from Burlington was pretty wild. You know, it's not something that was part of like my day to day, right? And that just tells you how there's so many fucking different experiences you can have in different parts of that big, beautiful country.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Is like I haven't been to a lot of places outside of the United States, but like the United States is huge, and I have been all over. I understand that culturally it is very similar everywhere, but so many beautiful places, so many cool people.
The silence is me like picturing views of like mountains and eagles.
I know.
yeah,
I have to
dude.
come to Wisconsin. We have to go on like a hike or something.
Oh,
Like
there's gorgeous nature here. Beautiful nature.
Yeah. And then we can actually bond about potatoes and I don't know, you haven't mentioned sauerkraut in this podcast yet. I feel a little
No, I'm trying to shut the fuck up about sauerkraut.
Can we
Everybody's getting sick of my bullshit.
that? Like, what's the sauerkraut story?
Yeah, let me just. I'll clue Mike in right now.
Yeah.
First of all, sauerkraut, like very big German influence in Wisconsin. Sauerkraut's huge here. But one of these people who I was talking about, who like works a recovered program, I just kind of found him out of the blue. He was talking about how like hardliner, like won't eat any baked goods that have vanilla extract in them. Won't touch but he's a Polish man, and I was like, what about sauerkraut, dude? And he's like, won't touch the stuff because it might. And I was like, why? He's like, because it might trigger the phenomenon of craving, like the trace amount of alcohol that is produced like by like fermenting your sauerkraut. And then I found out that like their EAA is pretty new in my town, but like they had a meeting, they had one DAA meeting that split and shut down because there was like an internal war over whether or not it was sober to consume kombucha and sauerkraut and these things. Yeah, which like obviously like people get to make their own decisions. I'm not here to police what anybody else wants to do. If you want to avoid like vanilla extract, that's fine. I certainly don't want to eat like a cake that's been like soaked in rum, right? But like sauerkraut, dude, what are we doing? I'm not giving up sauerkraut. And, it has yet to trigger the phenomenon of craving, except for more sauerkraut, honestly.
That's that. Okay. Yeah. I didn't want to be the guy that's like, so what do you guys keep talking about in sauerkraut? Like with sauerkraut. So this makes sense. Do you feel it though? I gotta ask, like, do you actually feel the trace amounts?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Like for low amount.
Yeah. I can't remember if I do with sauerkraut. I do with a little bit with kombucha. But I love kombucha. I'm not gonna give that shit up.
I will just say in defense of the people who are like anti-kombucha is there are kombuchas, including like brands you can buy in stores that are like pretty boozy.
Yeah, they are.
Like more boozy in non-alcoholic beer. So I will say I'm choosy about that. I'm careful about it. Like the white label GTs is pretty popular, and that's like certified like 0.004%, like literally like a trace amount. But so I get it. Like several people who don't want to drink kombucha, I certainly will not order a kombucha at like, if I'm at a brewery and they're like, oh, we have kombucha, it's NA. It's like,
Right.
I don't know how NA that is. So I get it.
Man, I feel like I have to expose myself. I don't I don't drink kombucha.
No, I mean, the motives for me are what I examine more than the actual thing, right? Like, because if I'm, and I have, if had more of the mindset of like, I'm going to avoid every trace amount of alcohol for the rest of my life, like, and that's the thing, then it's still some form
Yeah.
of, that can lead me down, some path of irrational fear. But if I examine like, well, why is it exactly like, do I like kombucha, or am I trying to chase some kind of weird head high? Then that's a
Yeah.
probably more important question for me than whether or not, the alcohol.
No, yeah, I get you. I get you 100%. It's about motives. Yeah, no, I don't drink kombucha. But I do shots of mouthwash. Is that okay?
Is your breath minty? Because if it is, it's
Always.
Or is it like the non-alcoholic mouthwash that you're doing? Just like trying to, I used to, when I was like sober in quotes, I used to smoke bowls of like CBD flower, but just like in a way that had no chill about it, like smoking tons of CBD flower, and then I would like run out of flour, and then I would scrape the bowl for resin, just like I would do when I was smoking weed. And it's like, this is not a normal, this is not a normal reaction
right,
that people have around CBD.
right.
That's what actually triggered the last time I went out. It got triggered because I was like, I'm so miserable right now. Like, let me just take a little drop of CBD oil. And then within like a few days, I was like just massively consuming amounts of CBD, which is such a dirty, gross high. And I remember this girl I was seeing at the time. I was over at her apartment. I gave her this giant bottle of CBD oil. I was like, I cannot be trusted with this. Like, you need to give this to me in like small doses. So we were sitting there watching a movie, and like the pizza guy came and rang the doorbell. So she went downstairs to get the pizza. And when she was downstairs, I like bolted to her bathroom cabinet, and I just like straight up drank like half a bottle of CBD oil just to get like the dirtiest, grossest
Dear
high. And of
God.
course, after that, it's just like, well, why am I doing this? Let me get the real thing. Like, what am I doing here? So I will eat sauerkraut. I will not touch CBD.